Chapter 1. The Call of Desire. The night was alive with a symphony of whispers. 1,000 secrets hung in the humid air, each one pulsing with the weight of unspeakable desire. In the heart of the plantation, where the moon dripped silver against the thick bark of ancient oaks, the boundary between hope and despair blurred, leaving only shadows to roam freely. Miriam stood beneath the sprawling branches of a gnarled tree, its twisted limbs a skeletal embrace against the dark sky. She could feel the pulse of the earth thrumming beneath her bare feet, a drum beckoning her deeper into the orchard's hidden sanctuary. Leaves rustled like hushed secrets, conspiring with the nightly breeze as the intoxicating scent of jasmine, heavy and sweet, wafted languidly through the air. Each breath pulled her closer to the edge of temptation. In that solitary moment, surrounded by vaporous night, she sensed his presence before she saw him. Silas, the master of the plantation, emerged from the shadows, his silhouette carved against the moonlight, striking and forbidding. The weight of his gaze was palpable, an invisible cord drawing her closer, igniting a fire that danced dangerously close to the fragile walls surrounding their world. "Do you hear it?" His voice low and velvety as the darkness broke the stillness like a sacrilegious lullaby. Miriam's heart quickened, a frantic bird trapped within her jest. "It whispers," she breathed, barely above a whisper, her voice trembling with the silken threads of fear and longing. He stepped closer, the soft crunch of fallen leaves accompanying his approach like a dark serenade. It was against all laws, against the very essence of their existence, but here beneath the moon, in the sacred embrace of the night, those constraints dissolved like fog beneath the sun. Miriam, his voice wrapped around her name, a conjuration that sent tremors through her tor. What place do the rules of men have in this moment, when the earth remembers our spirits as one? The air thickened around them, the tension crackling like distant thunder. The moon's glow painted his skin in soft luminescence, revealing the contours of his face, handsome yet haunted, and bearing away the burdens both seen and unseen. As he reached out, his fingers brushed against her wrist, a touch both electric and forbidden. She closed her eyes, allowing herself to drown into sensation, a jolt of fire racing through her veins, awakening the desires she had long locked away. But enclosed in that sweetness lurked a shadow. The air seemed heavy with the spirits of those lost. The chains of their confinement, whispery warnings older than the hills around them. "I shouldn't," she murmured, her voice thick with trepidation. They would not understand what you and I feel, what we are meant to find together. Listen to the night, Miriam, to the gall that binds us, as alluring and treacherous as strands of silk. Do you not feel it? A rustle in the thicket caused her to draw back, the enchantment around them shattering like glass. The shadows danced with awareness, promising both ecstasy and horror, urging her closer even as they loomed with dark foreboding.
Before she could reply, a cacophony of noises erupted from the underbrush. Frogs croaking in an unholy chorus, followed by a haunting melody carried by the wind. Echoey voices of lost souls, entwined in perpetual lamentation. She felt the chill of dread sneaking down her spine, her instincts screaming at her to retreat, to flee back to the safety of the mundane. They are always watching. The voice emerged from the darkness, gravelly and resonant. A spectre of the night, Josiah, the old groundskeeper, materialized from the shadows, his weathered face shimmering beneath a sheen of moonlight, eyes sunken and wise, like ancient wells filled with the weight of forgotten prophecies. "You ought to heed the warnings, child." Miriam's heart sent further into her stomach, the enchantment of the night fracturing beneath fear. "But Josiah, desire can twist, it can claw at the very marrow of your bones," he advised, peering into the board as though he could summon the spirits trapped within. "The roots of that tree," he gestured with a gnarled finger, "hold stories, unraveled destinies that echo through the night. Do you wish to write your own amongst the damned?" The air grew denser, laced with the palatable dread of those who would dare tread his forbidden paths. Silas's quick, taken utter wrist, grounding her even as fear threatened to pull her away. "What if we are different?" he whispered, a plea wrapped in conviction. "What if we can carve a new fate together?" Fates are chained, Josiah warned solemnly, his voice a rumble of thunder, hiding the truth. The night will not forgive what it does not understand. The full paranoia could pull her fully into despair. Silas edged closer, their breaths mingling in the humid air, a prelude to the inevitable. "Just one kiss," he implored, the tension so thick it felt almost sentient in its demand. The darkness pulsed around them, every rustle in the foliage a threat, every breath a gamble. For an instant everything faded, her fears, his burdens, leaving only the intoxicating call of desire, draping them in an unsettling cloak of longing. With a slight nod, she surrendered to the moment, the lips colliding with a hunger that spoke of countless lifetimes lost between them. The kiss ignited a spark, sending ripples through the surrounding night, awakening something ancient that spurred within the woods. But as their desire drew forth a rising tide, the joyful cry of a nightingale twisted into an eerie wail. Something shifted in the shadows, hungry and restless. Marine's heart thundered as she pulled away suddenly, her breath mingled with panic. "Spirits!" she gasped, feeling the air grow thick with their presence, a murmur of voices swirling around them, dark and accusatory. "Run!" Josiah's warning pierced through the mist of their passion, a cry of desperation, barely clinging to the remains of the night. But it was too late. The whispers throbbed louder and grew chaotic, turning into howls of anguish. A figure emerged from the darkness, obscured by the shroud of night, its form twisted, as if the very fabric of reality, threaded with despair, had brought it forth. "Miriam!" Silas shouted, his voice drowned in the cacophony of rage, drawing her closer to him as the darkness unfurled like a great maw intent on swallowing them whole. and then it fell upon them, a deluge of shadows, writhing and furious as it could cause any of lost souls, screamed in unison. The air choked with dread. In that heart-stopping moment, Miriam felt the slow, hurtling descent into an abyss where desire and despair kissed irreparably. The last thing she saw was the anguished face of Silas, merging with the shadows as they all were swept into the void.
Chapter 2. Shadows of the Heart. The moon hung low like a watchful eye, its cold light spilling over the landscape in silvery tendrils that twisted and curled like whispers of the long dead. The plantation lay still but for the distant murmurs of the night creatures, a haunting orchestra playing a languid yet ominous tune. Underneath the unyielding gaze of moonlight, secrets pulsed with an insidious vitality, thrumming against the walls of their confined hearts. Miriam stood at the edge of the meadow, trembling, a fragile figure cloaked in darkness and desire. Each breath was laced with the bittersweet memory of Silas's touch, a stolen moment now marred by what had unfolded, the shadows both comforting and terrible. With every heartbeat she felt the weight of the world bearing upon her, an impending storm swelling in her chest, urging her to tread dangerously close to the chaos lurking just beyond her grasp. "Come to me," came Silas's voice, low and velvety, slipping through the night's haze like silk. There he stood, half concealed beneath the swaying branches of the willow, his silhouette a dark temptation against a backdrop of flickering light. Miriam hesitated, glancing back toward the plantation, its darkened windows like watchful eyes peering into their souls. "We cannot. The night holds dangers we cannot fathom." Silas stepped from the shadows, the moonlight tracing over his handsome features, marred by a hint of desperation and longing. "But what if it is only our heart's desire that keeps us in chains?" A shiver ran through her, not from the chill in the air, but from the intoxicating pull of his words, a siren call she could hardly resist. "Dare we defy the very shadows that bind us?" He moved closer, each step deliberate, like a predator edging towards its prey. And yet there was something in his eyes, an unseen tumult that mirrored her own swirling fears. What if we do not choose it all? What if fate has already entwined our threads? The fabric of night thickened, pressing down upon them like a heavy shroud, suffocating yet igniting with reckless abandon. Silk strands of looming power intertwined with shadows of all that lay unspoken, a tapestry woven in the dark, revealing glimpses of freedom entwined with betrayal. Miriam felt twisted fantasies conjured by the moon's caress flicker in the corners of her mind. The air grew thick with an electric tension, sending ripples down her spine. "You don't understand. The spirits will not rest easily. They linger, waiting to exact their vengeance for desires they cannot fulfill." "Then let us face them together," he whispered, his breath hot against her ear. "Let us unleash the shadows and illuminate the hidden corners of our hearts."
Miriam's heart raced at his proposition, the very essence of rebellion swirling like a tempest in her veins. Yet, as she looked into his eyes, flickers of dread danced like fireflies trapped in brambles. Was she brave enough to surrender her cautious heart to the promise of ecstatic chaos? "Every heart holds darkness," Silas continued, glancing away toward the undulating shadows cloaked in the moon's glow. "You've felt the pull, haven't you? That wicked intertwining of pleasure and pain, pushing us closer to the cliff of oblivion?" Miriam's breath caught in her throat, a symphony of urgency thrumming beneath her skin. She could feel the magnetic force drawing her nearer to him, to the abyss that tugged at the corners of her mind and soul. "And if we fall, then we fall together," he declared fiercely, reaching out to cup her face. His touch ignited a firestorm of desire. "What is life without its peril? What is love without its demons?" The night seemed to hold its breath, listening, waiting. As he leaned closer, pressing his forehead against hers, the boundary between right and wrong, between fate and free will, shimmered like the dewy grass beneath their feet, an ethereal dance woven with danger. But at that moment a sudden howl pierced the night, a mournful cry that echoed through the trees, chilling Miriam's blood and sending a shock of fear coursing through her. "Did you hear that?" Silas drew back slightly, concern etching its way across his brow. "It's merely the wind playing tricks," he half laughed, though the humor lingered uneasily on his tongue. "No," she insisted, the weight of an ancient dread clawing at her insides. "Those sound like spirits calling." There, within the thicket, shadows twisted into shapes, fingers laced together, limbs stretching like specters rising from the earth, restless spirits seeking. "No!" her heart screamed as dark faces coalesced around the edges of her vision, their eyes alight with malice, yearning, and grief, the screams of the cursed whirling about them like a frenzied wind. "Something awakens," Silas shouted, seizing her hand as panic flashed across his features. "We must go." As he pulled her deeper into the woods, she could feel the breath of those lost souls brushing against her skin, cool and clammy, whispering her name through the leaves, begging for recognition and vengeance alike. Each step felt heavier, the moonlight fighting against the encroaching darkness that gnawed at the edges of their sanity. "Do you feel it?" Miriam gasped, straining against his grip as she was drawn back toward the haunting shadows. "They are restless." Silas's eyes flickered with torment, wrestling between the pull of their enchantment and the fear creeping into his bones. "We must not look back," he urged, his voice almost lost beneath the chorus of longing cries unfolding around them. But something dark slithered through the trees, grotesque and hungry, an affront to the very light they stood beneath. The shadows writhed as forms emerged, elongated limbs stretching toward them like roots of a dark tree hungry for nourishment, for blood, for acknowledgement of the unfulfilled lives they once lived. "We can't escape," Miriam cried, terror choking her words like thorns, clutching Silas's arm in a grip that felt like desperation incarnate. "What if they seize us?" "There!" Silas shouted, pointing toward a path thick with brambles. A fleeting glimpse of safety beckoned through the darkness, but stepping away from the shadows felt like a betrayal. "The spirits will be angry," she uttered, the words tumbling helplessly as fear tightened around her like a vice. "We cannot forsake them." But Silas knew, as the old groundskeeper had warned, that the time for reckoning had come. "We must forge ahead, my love. They can't take what we are willing to cast away." With renewed determination, he began to pull her forward, their frenzied pace quickening as the wails grew louder, pounding against the very pulses of their hearts. Shadows danced like wild specters, closing in with a deafening cacophony. Then silence. The weight of the world shifted as the chilling cries faded into a ghostly quiet, leaving only their rapid breaths and racing hearts. A false victory coughed up a grim laugh deep in the pit of her stomach, clawing to escape. Miriam felt the ground tremble beneath them, an echoing heartbeat rocking the earth, a rumble born not of storm but of wrath. "Look!" she cried, pointing toward the edge of the forest thick with unknown terror. The darkness twisted, boiling and roiling, as a shape emerged from the very depths of anguish. It lurked just beyond the moonlight, a monstrous shadow, heaps of souls entwined, gripped by the chains of their unquenched desires. The cries resumed, a swirling fog flexing against the flimsy barrier that held back darkness. "Run!" Silas shouted, his grip unyielding on her hand, pulling her deeper into the woods as they turned to flee, but all around them the darkness sighed, a chorus of despair rising like a storm. As they raced away, the shadows surged forward, clawing.
Chapter 3: The Enslaved Heirloom. In the heart of the plantation, shadows flickered like restless spirits, and a heavy air pressed down upon the land, saturating the night with a weight almost unbearable. The creaking of ancient wood blended with the soft rustle of leaves, whispering secrets too dark to understand. Tonight, the fabric of reality felt as though it might tear, revealing dark truths from a past that lay buried beneath layers of silence and sorrow. Miriam stood in the dim light of the flickering candle, her heart a frantic drum in her chest. She felt a pull, an unnatural draw toward the wooden chest that lay before her, locked away for as long as anyone could remember. It had been handed down through generations, a relic of a time that felt more like a nightmare than a history. Its polished surface gleamed faintly, as if it held secrets too heavy for its small frame to contain. As the flickering light danced, shadows waved like mournful spirits around the chest, beckoning and threatening all at once. With trembling fingers, she reached for the heavy lid, her pulse quickening as if the very air conspired to stop her. Inside was not just an heirloom, but a connection to a past riddled with whispers of desire and despair, a past that snared the souls of those who dared to seek it. The latch clicked open with a muffled sigh, like a voice releasing a breath held for too long. A faint, sweet smell began to waft from within, rich and seductive, at once familiar yet alien. As she lifted the lid, her breath hitched in her throat. Inside lay a silken pouch, its fabric shimmering dimly under candlelight, threads glinting like the eyes of a predator in the dark. Gingerly she grasped the pouch, the fabric cool against her fingertips, a stark contrast to the warmth pulsing in her blood. It felt alive, almost as if it had a heartbeat of its own, whispering promises of ecstasy buried beneath layers of duty and constraint. Gently she unfastened the silk tie, the whisper of rustling fabric sounding like a forbidden secret slipping free. Inside she uncovered a delicate necklace, an intricate design of entwined vines and petals, every curve echoing a shape of despair and longing. The pendant, a deep crimson stone, glowed softly, reminiscent of a heart caught between life and death. She could almost hear it hum with desire, beckoning her closer to its hidden depths. This belonged to someone far beyond our reach. A soft voice broke through the silence, startling her. It was Josiah, the old groundskeeper, stepping from the shadows like a specter wrought from ages past. His face, weathered and wise, seemed to absorb the very light around him, contouring his figure into something both comforting and ominous. "Take care," he warned, each word laced with gravity. "Heirlooms are double-edged. They can cut away your past or bind you deeper into shadows you cannot escape." Miriam's fingers brushed against the necklace, igniting a trail of warmth that surged through her veins, unveiling grasping desires she'd spent her life burying. "But it's beautiful," she countered, her voice a murmured protest against the grip of fear. "What danger can there be in something so exquisite?" His eyes glinted, filled with the weight of knowing. He saw into the depths of her longing, the yearning for freedom etched into her very bones. If beauty holds darkness within its petals, it can ensnare you in its thorns. He stepped closer, a glimmer of urgency breaking through the stillness. It can drape you in a web of seduction and despair. Ignoring the undertow of dread threatening to pull her under, she clasped the necklace around her neck, the cool metal resting against her skin, awakening a shiver of electric anticipation. The moment it settled against her pulse, a warmth enveloped her. The pendant pulsed like the thrum of a heartbeat, filling her with a sense of longing so profound it threatened to drown her reason. "I can feel it," she whispered, her breath trembling as she looked back at Josiah. His frown deepened, shadows pooling beneath his eyes. "Not all awakenings are blessings, child. Sometimes they leave scars deeper than flesh." The flickering candle seemed to waver at his words, casting flickering shadows that danced like phantoms on the walls. Ignoring the creep of apprehension that threatened to devour her, she pondered the depths of her wish. With the necklace against her heart, she felt a newfound yearning for Silas, a desire to plunge into the depths of their forbidden passion without hesitation. But lurking behind those desires was the familiar gnaw of despair, a reminder of the chains that bound them. "Trust the darkness," Josiah murmured, his voice like the rustle of distant leaves. "But beware its hunger. It desires to consume you, to turn love into servitude." A flash of uncertainty gripped her as she recalled the shadows that tracked her, spirits restless and vengeful, eyes glimmering in the dark. They whispered truths buried deep within the soil, lamenting their lost chances and the price of unfulfilled longing. But this moment, with the necklace shimmering against her skin, felt different. It vibrated not only with darkness, but also a surge of illuminating freedom. "I'll be careful," she replied, though her heart was a riot of contradictions. "I must know the depths of what this brings." As the pendant flared bright, casting a crimson hue that licked at the walls like flames igniting new desires. "Sense it," urged the heirloom, the throbbing energy wrapping around her heart with a possessive warmth. The air thickened, suffused with an intoxicating blend of desire and dread. With every breath she felt the boundaries of her life stretching, aching for release from the confines of duty. But then, within the warmth came a chill, a sudden crack in the night's veneer. Shadows twisted around her, forming shapes that whispered of longing and loss, murmuring twisted truths, pulling her deeper into the abyss of her heart's desires. "Do not look into the shadows they conjure," Josiah warned again, but it was too late. The darkness rose up, enveloping her like hands grasping at her silhouette, fingers trailing across her skin, while whispers danced along her ear like a haunting lullaby. 1,000 loves lost echoed in the night, their stories woven into anguished cries that touched her very soul. "Miriam!" Silas's voice shattered the suffocating heaviness, echoing through the suffocating darkness, pulling at her essence. "Miriam, do not be taken by shadow! Miriam!" she cried, the warmth in her heart snowballing into a frantic blaze. But as she turned, the cling of shadows tugged at her limbs, slowing her down, turning her desperate pleas into more tantalizing whispers. Josiah's hands gripped her shoulders, anchoring her, but she could feel herself slipping, wading into a sea of darkness filled with longing and futile hopes. "You must fight," he urged, panic glimmering in his eyes as he felt the web close around her. With a final push, she glanced back into the enveloping despair. The necklace pulsed in warning against her chest, throbbing with an urgency that mirrored the chaos around her. Longing swirled within her heart, inexorably binding her to silence.
Chapter 4. Sinful Confessions. The night descended like a shroud, wrapping the plantation grounds in an oppressive silence that felt almost sentient. Beneath the pale silver of the moon, the scattered stars blinked like distant eyes, observing the unfolding drama within. A heavy fog crept across the landscape, thickening the air, each breath marked by an intoxicating blend of jasmine and secrets entwined in darkness. Miriam stood on the balcony of the old plantation house, her heart thrumming against her ribs, a restless bird seeking escape. Below her, the grounds shifted in shadows, alive with nocturnal whispers that seemed to echo her own tumultuous thoughts. She could feel them, the spirits of the estate, trapped between worlds, yearning for release. Their sighs melded with her own, drawing her further into their haunted embrace. As she leaned against the wooden railing, the coolness of the balustrade a stark contrast to the tempest boiling within, she caught sight of Silas making his way through the garden, navigating the labyrinth of thorns and blossoms that held their own secrets. Clad in the heavy darkness, he moved with an elegance that both terrified and enthralled her. "Come to me," he beckoned, his voice a low whisper carried on the night breeze, wrapping around her heart with silken threads. Miriam's breath caught, and without a second thought she slipped into the shadows, her feet guided by an unseen force. Each step felt like a rebellion against the weights of the world, a desperate embrace of the exquisite danger that awaited her. The garden's enchantment surrounded her, every flower and leaf pulsating with the energy of dark, hidden truths. "Silas," she voice trembled, laced with anticipation, as she drew near to where he stood among the creeping jasmine, the air thickening with a heady aroma that matched the heat blossoming between them. "What do you wish to confess?" he replied, his voice low and intense, drawing her closer as he stepped into the moonlight, revealing the raw edges of his desire. "Do you not feel it too, Miriam, the weight of secrets held within our hearts?" The night seemed to listen, every breath held tantalizingly still as their gazes locked. Shadows danced around them, flickering reluctantly as their deepest fears intertwined with forbidden desires, creating an atmosphere heavy with possibility. "What if it leads us to madness?" she whispered, a tremor of fear brushing against her resolve. "Or ecstasy," he countered, stepping closer, the air between them charged with electricity, resonating with the echoing whispers of the past. "What do you desire?" Silas pressed, his eyes glinting like storm clouds, a tempest brewing just beneath the surface. Miriam hesitated, the suffocating tension winding tightly around her chest. "You know I am bound by chains unseen, Silas. The world will never accept what we are." "Fate calls to us even from the depths of the shadows," he murmured, lowering his voice to a whisper that sent shivers racing across her skin. "Those chains may bind our bodies, but they cannot bind our spirits. What would you risk in the fires of desire?" As darkness encircled them like a lover's embrace, silence descended, thick and pregnant with anticipation. Miriam's heart kicked wildly as the realization washed over her, echoing into the cloak of the night. She yearned for freedom, for this intoxicating love, but the reality of their world threatened to snuff out that flame. "I would risk anything," she finally breathed, the confession tearing free from her lips as if it had traveled through time, echoing with a visceral truth, one that resonated with those lost souls dancing in the shadows. "Evan, my very soul." The air between them crackled, the ground shivering with unseen presence, urging them closer, closer still until their breaths mingled in the darkness, pregnant with inevitability. "Then kiss me," he whispered, his voice a velvet caress that sent tremors through her body, awakening primal instincts that lay dormant for too long. With a heartbeat suspended in time, she leaned forward, their lips brushing gently at first, a tender exploration laced with urgency, gathering intensity until the world fell away. It felt as if the shadows spiraling around them danced in tandem with their fevered breaths, intoxicating them with a rush of adrenaline and longing. But as passion ignited, a whisper slithered between them, carrying the essence of the plantation's ghosts, cries of anguish intertwined with their fervent declarations of desire. A heavy tension filled the air, punctuated by the sudden, piercing cries that reverberated within the depths of the night, echoing the soul's longing for release. "Do you hear them?" Miriam gasped, pulling away, her eyes wide with both fear and realization. "The spirits, they are restless, Silas. They hunger for something we cannot give." "In their hunger lies our truth," he replied, desperation stinging the edges of his voice. "We tread upon sacred ground, and the shadows demand our confessions." Miriam felt the ground soften beneath her, as if the earth itself quaked in response to their unwitting revelations. The air vibrated with unresolved energies, fanning the edges of their fears until they felt almost tangible. "What do they seek?" she asked, fear lacing her words like venom as she stole glances into the darkness. "Perhaps," Silas said, inching closer again, "perhaps they seek to remind us of our own unspoken truths. Perhaps it is our fear that binds them to this place." "Or binds us," Miriam murmured, the chill running down her spine, threatening to consume her, to drown her once more in the despair of the past. "We tread a dangerous line, Silas. To unveil such secrets is to risk losing ourselves." "I refuse to let fear dictate our fates," he said fiercely, a fire igniting within him, illuminating the shadows dancing in his eyes. "We must listen, Miriam. Their sorrowed confessions intertwine with ours, anchoring us to a shared destiny." But as Silas spoke, the air grew denser, suffused with the chilling essence of a presence that resonated with sorrow. In the depths of the darkness, something stirred, a palpable tension that seemed poised to explode. Without warning, a gust of wind swept through the garden, uprooting blooming flowers and chilling the warmth they had created. Whispers, now more insistent, surged around them like a tempest unleashed, hushed, frantic voices, murmuring incantations both ancient and wild. "Forgive us," a voice cried, unraveling like a thread within the fabric of night. "Release us." Miriam stumbled back, fear clawing at her heart, gasping for breath as the shadows shifted around them, thickened by centuries of anguish. "What do they want?" she asked, fear lacing her words like venom as she stole glances into the darkness. "Perhaps," Silas said, inching closer again, "they desire to be heard," he shouted above the surging winds, his voice filled with fervor. "Their truth, our truth, we cannot hide from it any longer." But as their words began to merge with the whispers surrounding them, an apparition broke forth from the depths of the garden, an anguished figure clothed in a veil of sorrow, eyes hollow and filled with a consuming darkness. "Confess."
Chapter 5. The Covenant of Blood. The air crackled with tension, thick as a storm cloud poised to unleash its fury. In the heart of the plantation, where shadows tangled with the suffocating humidity of the southern night, a pact was waiting to be forged. The very earth seemed to lean in, eager to eavesdrop on what was to come. Miriam stood at the edge of the clearing, her breath quickening as the moon wove itself through the canopy, casting an ethereal glow over a makeshift altar, crafted from rotting wood and overgrown vines. The air shimmered with an unsettling vibrancy as live oaks, ancient witnesses cloaked in Spanish moss, bowed their branches in reverence or warning. Silas entered the clearing, his eyes dark pools reflecting the chaos within. Clenching a small dagger, its blade catching the silvery glint of the moonlight, he approached her, gravity pulling them together in a tapestry woven from desperation and desire. "Miriam," he breathed, the name rolling off his tongue like a spell. "This is our moment, a binding that will shatter the chains of our oppression." Her heart thudded painfully in her chest, each beat drumming a rhythm of fear and fervor against the stillness that enveloped them. "But what will it cost us, Silas?" A tremor lined her voice as her thoughts darted back to Josiah's warnings, echoing through her mind like a mournful hymn. "Everything," he whispered, his gaze unwavering, the dagger held aloft like an offering to the throbbing silence that enveloped them. A shuddering breath slipped from her lips as doubts loomed like dark specters, feeding the growing dread, layering the atmosphere with unseen weight. "And if the darkness consumes us for good, the darkness will only reclaim what it has lost," Silas said, his voice an urgent whisper charged with conviction. "Why should we cower in fear when our very souls yearn for the ecstasy of liberation?" As he spoke, the rustle of leaves crescendoed around them, an audience of spirits lifting the air with their anticipatory murmurs. The forest itself seemed to listen, its heartbeat echoing between the trees as a solemn chant began, slowly awakening the specters of the past from their restful slumber. Her hand reached out, trembling, fingers brushing the hilt of the dagger as it glimmered in the ghostly light. "You would risk everything for a chance to be free? But how much blood must spill to seal this union?" "Only enough to tether our fates," he vowed. The conviction in his gaze ignited a furnace of resolve within her chest. The moonlight danced across his features, sharpening his visage into something fierce and divine, an embodiment of raw, desperate love. As their fingers entwined like creeping ivy, her heart raced in time with the pounding of her fears. The consequences loomed like a tempest gathering at the edge of the horizon, dark and unyielding. "Then let us forge our destiny." With a swift motion, Silas sliced the blade across his palm, a crimson line blooming instantaneously against his flesh. The blood glistened like rubies, rolling down to the scarred earth, a rhythm pulsing between them, demanding acknowledgement of the pact that bound them to the unseen forces waiting in the dark.
Miriam swallowed hard. The metallic scent of blood ignited something primal within her. As she pressed her palm against his, she felt the warmth seep into her own, mingling their essences in a dance of longing, an energy that crackled with warnings both ancient and sinister. "By blood we are bound," Silas intoned, their voices echoing through the trees, mingling with the wails of the night. As their blood coalesced against the ground, the very air seemed to thrum with energy. The shadows around them rippled like disturbed water, whispering in tongues long forgotten. The night throbbed with an otherworldly awareness, the trees leaning closer as though they were drawn into their covenant. In that fleeting moment, time stood still, and everything felt illusory, the heaviness of reality peeling away like thin skin, revealing raw promise beneath. They leaned closer, hearts racing in synchrony, breaths mingling as fate pulled them into a kiss steeped in passion, binding their fates tighter. But the plantation itself shuddered. The wind howled with fury as unseen forces coiled around the clearing, shrieking with malevolent urgency. Shadows twisted, penetrating the periphery of their vision, clawing at the edges of their union with a darkness that was palpable and unforgiving. "Silas," Miriam gasped, breaking away from their fevered embrace, panic gripping her heart like a vice. The cries of tormented souls grew louder, crashing against her mind like waves of despair, each one laden with sorrow long entombed. An insidious voice rose within the cacophony, a haunting whisper shifting through the trees. "Release us, take us." "Miriam, stay with me," Silas pleaded, his grip tightening around her wrist as the shadows closed in around them, swirling like an angry tempest, eager to shatter what they had forged. But beneath the fabric of the night, unseen energies hungered, a darkness coiling on itself, uncoiling ancient evils entwined in thinly veiled promises they had failed to grasp. The earth trembled violently, the very roots of the plantation yearning to break free as the screams grew deafening, invading their thoughts, saturating their senses with terror. "What have we awakened?" she cried, a whirlwind of terror enveloping her, her heart racing with the primal fear of the unknown. The shadows echoed with sinister laughter, twisting the air around them like a hissing serpent. "You have bound yourselves to us," the voice moaned, stretching from unseen edges, "and bound yourselves to darkness." The clearing darkened, swirling deeper into the void, and it felt as though they stood at the precipice of despair. The silhouettes of the trees morphed, twisting with malicious glee as the moonlight waned, replaced with an oppressive darkness that threatened to consume them whole. "No," Silas shouted, pulling her closer, determination blazing in his eyes. But as she gazed into the swirling void, despair clawed at her heart, pulling her down, threatening to unravel the very fabric of herself. The walls of her mind trembled, shadows merging with bitter memories, anger bubbling to the surface, long-suppressed anguish stirring like venomous serpents awakened from a deep slumber. We cannot be bound to sorrow, she whispered, anguish breaking through their union, her resolve faltering as the wicked shadows danced around them, eager to claim what they had awakened. And then, with a surge of heavy fog, figures emerged from the depths of darkness, lost souls woven into the landscape, their twisted forms grasping at the air with outstretched fingers, eyes sunken like wells of despair. "Join us," they wailed, voices merging into a haunting chorus of bitterness, resonating with promises too dark to fathom. "Get back," Silas shouted, his voice roaring over the wail.
Chapter 6 Morning Echoes. The night unfurled its heavy cloak as twilight sank into the oppressive embrace of darkness. A thick fog rolling over the plantation grounds, a spectral canvas painted with whispers of sorrow and regret. The air hung heavy with an ancient grief, a chilling presence that shivered just beyond the edges of perception, wrapping itself around the figures that dared to tread the earth. Shadows stretched and twisted through the thick underbrush, eager to envelop any soul that wandered too far from the light. In the depths of this haunted landscape, Miriam's heart raced, caught in this stifling web of secrets and unfulfilled longings. The moon rose high, a watchful guardian of lost souls, its pallid glow casting grotesque shapes across the cracked earth. As she stood beneath a gnarled oak, the twisted branches swaying in a ghostly caress, she felt the weight of unseen eyes upon her, a congregation of specters yearning to unveil their truth. Silas emerged from the shadows, his presence both a balm and a torment. His eyes dark and dense bore into hers, brimming with desire, yet shadowed by the weight of knowing, the burden of shared secrets that united them across turbulent waters. "Miriam," he breathed, every syllable thick with urgency. "Tonight must be different. We cannot hide what we feel any longer." The tension snapped between them, electric as their paths converged beneath the canopy of the night. With each step closer, she felt the stirring of restless spirits, an echoing pulse that surged beneath her skin, a symphony of longing intertwining with anguish. "You feel it too, don't you?" she whispered, her voice trembling as she drew nearer, embers of longing igniting within her. "The voices, they cry for acknowledgment." "They always have," he replied, each word hushed, reverent. "But it is not their cries we must answer tonight. It is ours." As their lips met, a wave of desire washed over her, igniting her senses in a conflagration of fire that contrasted sharply with the chilling atmosphere surrounding them. His touch was fevered, awakening each layer of her being as if pulling her from the clutches of despair just for a moment. But nestled within that passion, their symphonic undercurrent, mournful sighs and whispers lurking in the shadows, swirling around them like phantoms yearning for release, every caress a potential sacrilege amidst the echoes of the past. With each kiss stolen in the embrace of dark longing, the air thickened with an unmistakable presence. Those who were once held captive by grief, now unfurling from the grades of time.
Miriam. His voice trembled against the haunting backdrop as their intimacy sparked precarious balance of rapture and dread. Do you not hear them? The souls, they are restless. With a gasp, she broke the kiss, pulling away just enough to gaze into Silas's troubled eyes, the moonlight illuminating the fear that glimmered in their depths. Yes, she whispered, her throat dry as her heart raced. They long for justice. They long for acknowledgment. In that moment, the weight to history crashed down around them, memories of the oppressed echoing like a mournful wire, rich with the pain of betrayal and longing. Each heart beat from the rhythm of despair, pulling the shadows closer in a dance of sorrow that threatened to engulf them both. The dreams of the past mingled with the ache of their present. Mimio here urged, anxiety twisting his features. You must draw them into the light, to acknowledge what they have lost, what they have sacrificed. Silas took her hands in his, grounding her as the air simmered with anticipation. They craved release, but they will demand a price. Love has stirred them from their slumber. We must be ready. As if on cue, a gust of wind swept through the grove, stirring leaves and sending shivers down her spine. The trees creaked in solemn agreement. They remembered the laughter and the tears, the dreams forged in the fires of despair and loss. The ghosts wailed, a cacophony echoing through the night, threads of despair weaving heavier around them. Miriam! Silas! The voice came from the depths, a sharp cry that punctured their reverie, sending dread spiraling through the air like a frozen knife. It was Josiah, bursting through the shadows, his features set in terror. You must stop. The past is not again to be toyed with. What do you mean? Silas demanded, pulling Miriam close as if to shield her from the gathering darkness. We seek to bring peace. Peace? Josiah's voice rose, edged with panic and urgency. You awaken the spirits, yes, but their thirst for blood is insatiable. Their justice is marked in fear and blood. You'll unleash something far darker than you'll control. Just as the last echoes of his warning slipped into the night, a chilling melody erupted from the shadows, wheeling through the trees like a spectral dance. The mournful wails of lost souls crescendoed, vibrating through the very fabric of existence, wrapping around Miriam like a noose. Shadows congeal into figures, shapes rising from the underbrush, twisting figures cloaked in sorrow, the faces distorted with anguish, longing for the warmth of life they could never reclaim. Hold your ground, Silas shouted, fear surging through him as the figures pressed closer, spectral eyes gleaming with both rage and pleading. Miriam, heart hammering in her chest, felt the oppressive weight of unresolved history suffocating her soul. It was now or never, the moment of binding their fates to those lost in the depths of despair. I will not let you take us, she shouted, raising her voice against the surging tide of shadows that clamored for recognition, for release. The figures lunged closer, anger threading through their ghostly forms, and their whispers turned into a dreadful chant, a chorus of pain that clutched at her heart like icy claws. "You have beckoned us," the wailing chorus screamed, each voice overlapping, an anguish symphony tearing through the night. "Run, Miriam!" shouted, but the malevolent force surged forward on Lord's sides, and the world spun into chaos. Shadow merging with despair, a carnival of terror born from anguish and betrayal. In their frantic escape, Silas stumbled, and with a cry he was drawn back by invisible hands. The air thickened as the shadows clawed at him, echoing 1,000 lost voices. "No, Miriam!" he cried. "Do not look back! Fight!" But the darkness enveloped him, and in that moment the last vestige of hope faded, as the trees twisted and called, the shadows merging into a suffocating well that threatened to swallow them both whole. Silence fell, heavy and foreboding, as they were left with nothing but whispers of the past.
7. Revenants in Bloom. The garden thrummed with a pulse not its own, the air thickened by a heady mixture of night, decay, and desire. Once a sanctuary teeming with the vibrant hues of flora, the plantation's garden had become a graveyard of wilting blooms, an echoing reminder of beauty lost to the ravages of time. Insects buzzed in the silence, their sounds a soft dirge that pulsed in harmony with the dread that hung heavy under the moon's watchful eye. Miriam clutched Silas's hand, the warmth of his skin igniting a fire deep within her, even as the cool tendrils of twilight curled around them. Their breaths mingled in the heavy air like whispered promises, yet an unsettling tension loomed, as though the very ground below them quaked with anticipation. "Can you feel it?" she murmured, casting a wary glance toward the thick shadows that sprawled like hungry tendrils across the garden's path. "It's alive," Silas replied, eyes scanning the dense foliage, more so than it ever was. Around them, the once flourishing flowers, vibrant and lush, had turned into twisted, clawing forms, petals curling with rot and despair, their beauty a distant ghost haunting the shadows. Miriam stepped carefully, her heart heavy within her chest, drawing herself nearer to the tightly entwined vines that seemed to vie for her attention. "Each flower weeps," she whispered, her voice trembling as she pressed her fingertips against a withering blossom. "They long for something, lost love, perhaps, or vengeance." "You've always had a knack for seeing beyond the surface," Silas said, his gaze focused ahead as a shiver ran down his spine, though he forcibly smiled, a flicker of bravado in an otherwise treacherous arena. "And tonight that gift may save us." As the moon slipped deeper into the sky, casting ethereal light through the web of branches, Miriam sensed it, an electric hum that vibrated through the air, calling to her, a siren's song woven intricately with the steady beat of her desire. "What if the spirits linger here? What if they seek to join us?" "Perhaps," he replied, tightening his grip, "but we must tread carefully. The garden is no longer a sanctuary, it's a sleeping monster." The shadows burgeoned around them, creeping ever closer, eager to enfold them with a coil that both entranced and terrified. Flowers swayed softly, petals brushing against each other with a ghostly whisper that carried on the wind like secrets carried through time. With an uncalculated boldness, Miriam pulled Silas toward the heart of the garden, a place where wildflowers prevailed, weaving together a tapestry of color and desolation. The air grew thick like molasses, each sluggish moment amplifying the mounting tension that surged between them, a fevered pulse racing through her body, igniting the dark fire of yearning within. "Miriam," Silas began, his voice swallowed by the sounds of the night, "we should not." But her resolve, fueled by the urgency of their connection, stilled him with a hunger he could not resist. "We must unveil our truth amid this turmoil," she insisted, looking up to him with a fierce need to escape the dragging gravity of their reality. "Here, the danger mirrors our desire." As their lips met, tender yet desperate, a shock rippled through the air, the taste of longing mingling with the bittersweet tang of darkness that permeated the garden, wrapping itself around them. Flowers responded, quivering as though animated by the fervor of their kiss. The garden stirred, a breathing entity caught in the throes of passion and despair, both yearning to intertwine, yet fragments of despair painting it with shadows. "Feel it," Silas urged, pulling her deeper into the embrace of the blooms, alluring chaos cloaking their passion as if the very essence of the land wove them together. "Let the spirits witness our union. Let them drink from our desires as we drink from theirs." As they surrendered to the kiss, a rustling emerged at the edge of the garden, creeping along the threshold of dread. Inoculated by haste, Miriam broke the kiss, her heart racing as the noise intensified, growing into a roar echoing through her mind, an angry lament demanding recognition. The shadows crept closer, breathing down their necks, a dark presence pulsating with hunger. "They do not approve," she said softly, apprehension knotting within her stomach. "Their memories linger too strongly among these blooms. We must show respect." "Morning echoes are a reminder of love entwined with loss," Silas whispered, his brow furrowed as he held her gaze, urgency twisting around his words. "But we've awakened something. They thirst for acknowledgement and vengeance entwined." Suddenly the garden thrashed, flowers bent at unnatural angles as the shadows swelled, vast waves of darkness crashing carelessly against the boundaries of their desires. The damned souls shifted, emerging from the graves of their once vibrant dreams, forming misty figures clad in ancient garments, a haunting procession of lost time. "Oh, heed their cries," Silas shouted, fear threading through his voice as the winds whipped around them. The specters surged forth, faces distorted by sorrow and longing, echoing the pain of hearts once vibrant, now lost to rot and decay. "You take what is sacred," they wailed, voices erupting into a tempest of grief that clawed mercilessly at the fabric of their union. Miriam staggered back, horror twisting her insides, even as something deep within her craved acknowledgement. "What do you want from us?" she cried, grasping Silas's hand tightly as the shadows loomed ever closer, their despair drenching the air and blurring the once beautiful blooms into grotesque forms. Your passion, one spectre intoned, voice trembling as it extended skeletal hands toward them, pupils hollow like deep voids. We are lovers lost, confined within this garden of grief, forsaken by those we adored. We seek our reckoning and your truth entwined with our pain. Miriam's heart sank as the shadows curled around them, their tendrils brushing her skin with cold fingers of regret, breathing life into every longing unfulfilled. We join us, the chorus of spirits rose, reckless and furious, a wave of anguish cresting through the air as the darkness seethed around them, creeping into their very souls. You will become part of our bloom, part of our pain. We can't become what they are, Silas shouted, pulling Miriam closer as their surroundings buckled under the pressure of the ghost's fury. We must break free. In a desperate bid for escape, Miriam closed her eyes as she felt the overwhelming tide of longing consuming her. But what is freedom if not intertwined with love? She cried, voices of the spirits colliding in an anguished symphony over her. What if we embrace their pain? The haunting winds around them howled, rising to a crescendo that rattled the leaves and sent shivers darting down her spine. Flowers twisted, remembering the embrace of lovers past, blooming with life only to wither and decay again. Silas grasped her shoulders, determination glowing in his dark eyes. We won't die here, Miriam, not now, not ever. Yet as he spoke, the garden throbbed with energy, shadows coiling tighter as the wails of the damned rose to a pitch height, each note pulling them under, binding them with regrets, their love mingling with sorrow only to be consumed. Miriam turned to face the encroaching darkness, feeling the weight of its despair press down around them, the air thickening, suffocating.
Chapter 8. The Strangled Net. The air hung foul with betrayal and desire, a fetid tapestry woven from secrets as old as the oaks themselves, and when the moon slid free of its veil, the garden became a trapdoor for the soul. The plantation shadows clung to Miriam like a second skin, hushed and hungry, while the gnat pressed in with a brutal tenderness that felt like a blade against the throat. The strangled net stretched between them, taut with the tremor of proximity, and every thread hung with sighs of those who had learned to bleed their secrets into the dark. Miriam moved through the courtyard as if moving through a memory that had learned to walk on its hind legs, the sandals she wore dragging along the ground with a sanctimonious slowness that never quite measured the tempo of her pulse. The garden lay in wait, a labyrinth of wisteria and thorn, where the scent of damp earth and decayed blossoms clung to the air like an incense at a funeral rat. The night itself seemed to listen, and for the moment when their hidden promises would snap and spill like wine over the lips of a thirsty world. Silas appeared from the hollowness of the hedges, his presence both a beacon and a blade, a man who wore danger as a cloak and wore desire as a blade. His voice came to her in a rasping whisper, a rasp that felt like velvet dragged across a rasp of steel. "You hear it?" he asked, mouth curling into a smirk that was half invitation, half warning. The net has grown taut around us, love. It knows our names and it stomachs our sins. Miriam's breath caught a flame licking along the seam of her ribs. Then what are we but moths, dancing toward the flame we pretend will spare us? Her words buzzed with a reckless bravado that barely masked the tremor in her hands. Betrayal stood so close we could taste its metal chin on the tongue. She barely dared to meet his eyes, knowing the furnace in them could melt the last semblance of caution they wore. The garden listened, and in its listening it breathed forth a chorus of rustling leaves and whispered insinuations, the kind of whispers that make a person store them away as if they were talismans against the night. The vines wrapped around the stone path with a patient, merciless patience, as though they were sewing a net of living threads, waiting for the moment when two hearts would tug at the wrong stitch, and the whole fabric would collapse into wreckage and revelation. Silas stepped close until the air between them steamed with heat and risk. His voice came to her in a rasping whisper, a rasp that felt like velvet dragged across a rasp of steel. "We've hidden in the folds of deceit long enough," he murmured, voice thick with the sweetness of a threat. "If we pull, the whole canopy will rain down on us, but perhaps that rain will wash away some of the stains we've carried." Her eyes glowed with a dangerous light, a tinder box primed with sparks that could ignite a city of graves. "Stains," she echoed, pasting the word on her tongue as if it were a bitter fruit she had promised herself to swallow. "We've stained ourselves with the cooler of truth, and the truth does not forgive the way we want it to." She reached for him, fingers brushing the damp skin of his wrist, and the contact sent a shudder through them both that felt almost sacramental in its blasphemy. From the shadows, the garden offered up a chorus of smile cruelties, an insect scream, a leaf that pricked the skin like a pin, a blossom that released a scent so sweet it threatened to intoxicate. The air grew thick with the smoke of unspoken words, with the memory of the many betrayals that had woven this night into a tapestry of violence and desire. A chorus of voices rose in the distance, the sounds of old grievances and newer treacheries, voices that had learned to speak in the margins of history. Josiah's voice broke through the murk, a weathered air tolling with grave insistence. "The net tightens," he warned, stepping from between two barrel pines with the cautious gait of a man who knew dread by name. Miriam turned, the candle in her mind wavering, and she found Silas's face lit by a fural glow. His pupil held some shadow that wasn't fear, but a stubborn, gleaming resolve. "We are not the first to dance in the teeth of doom," he whispered, voice a rasp of silk and steel. "But perhaps we are the last who can pretend the chorus is only an audience to our show." The garden seemed to lean closer, the branches bending as if listening for the moment when their bodies would betray the truth of their hearts to the world. The flowers, once a bouquet of tones and fragrances, had thickened into bruised, archaic glooms, their petals lacquered with dew that tasted of iron and rain. They rustled against each other in a concert of hushed scandal,
and Miriam felt the weight of every gaze, the unseen, omnipresent, judgmental audience of the plantation who watched not just with their eyes, but with their very souls. Then the first kiss came as a dare delivered by fate and fear alike. It began as a mere thrust, a sharing of breath, a longing, and grew with a ferocity that made the air tremble in their lungs. The moment their lips met, a wave of electricity ran through them, a current that sparked behind the eyelids and tuned the world to glass. Fragile, dangerous, perfect in its peril. The kiss tasted of salt and iron and something else. Something old, something ancestral, something that would not stay contained in the moment. The moment stretched like a string pulled tight over an abyss, taut with the possibility of catastrophe and ecstasy alike. With each caress, the net's weave tightened, and the sense of eyes upon them rose from the soil, a multitude of invisible spectators whose hunger turned to weapon or witness. The whispers grew bolder, slipping into the conversation with a breathy insistence. "You think you hide," murmured a voice that wasn't there, brushing against Miriam's ear like a cold kiss. "We have watched your lovers. We had learned your names. We know where you meet. We know what you dare to dream." The voice belonged to no one and to everyone. To every unsung grievance and every unspoken vow in the plantation's long grieving history. Silas's grip tightened to restrain, but to anchor. "We must be honest," he breathed. "Honesty is a weapon against the lies we told ourselves about power, about longing, about a future that might bleed his cry." Her eyes glowed with a dangerous light, a tinderbox primed with sparks that could ignite a city of graves. "Stains," she echoed, tasting the word on her tongue as if it were a bit of fruit she had promised herself to swallow. "We stained ourselves with the queller of truth, and the truth does not forgive the way we want it to." She reached for him, fingers brushing the damp skin of his wrist, and the contact sent a shudder through them, though that felt almost sacramental in its blasphemy. From the shadows, the garden offered up a chorus of smiled cruelties. An insect scream, a leaf that pricked their skin like a pin, a blossom that released a scent so sweet it threatened to intoxicate. The air grew sick with the smoke of unspoken words, with the memory of the many betrayals that had woven this night into a tapestry of violence and desire. A chorus of voices rose in the distance, the sounds of old grievances and newer treacheries, voices that had learned to speak in the margins of